you, Wendy, for all your technical help, or else we wouldn't be here. And I'm going to, I think I got it this time. Okay, is everybody seeing a good piece of presentation? Hopefully.
Jane, it looks great.
Okay, super. Thank you so much. So rooting in the landscape, session 2, the surface. Before we actually start, I'd like to go back to the point of connecting. And if everybody's ready, they can go up and maybe click on the microphone to mute. Hopefully that will help clarify some of what's going on, some of the whooshing maybe, and some of the feedback. And we'll just once again begin by orienting ourselves to this work, this time and this place. We're so busy rushing hither, thither, and yon, and you probably hurried up to scoot to connect today to do this. Let's begin by orienting to now. And I just want to double check. Wendy, are we recording?
We are, but thank you for double checking.
Okay, great. Thank you. I didn't see any flip or anything. That's great. Super. Okay, so in our initial workshop, we created an altar. And once again, I'm going to ask that you have that next to you on your surface there. And I'm wondering, did anybody feel the need to change any piece of this? Did you think of changing your gift of nature? Anybody change anything? It's certainly okay to change. I didn't change anything. I kept my candle, I kept my crystal, and I kept my cloth. Always feel free to change whatever needs to be. That's your altar, it's your space to do with as you please. And now that you've got your altars established, let's go ahead and, if your space permits it, light your candle. And remember that as we light our candle, what we're doing is welcoming in the flame, the light, and it reminds us that we are the light. It reminds us how we shine our light forward. And it brings to us this idea of deeper and deeper connections so that we can open to deeper and deeper aspects of ourselves. I found a wonderful quote about fire. Mircea Eliade was writing about it. And he noted that in certain Vedic rituals, fire was used as a way to take possession of a territory. He went on to say that by the erection of a fire altar, Agni, which is fire god, is made present, and communication with the world of the gods is ensured. The space of the altar becomes a sacred space. So maybe that's a way you can begin to think about your altar. You've invited fire, you've invoked the gods. So now that we've set this place, this physical space, we're going to set our minds, our bodies, and our spirits. We'll meditate again, and we'll use the same flow as we did last time. And as we meditate with our altar, I want to remind you that when we get to the part about toning, make sure that you do hum or tone along with me in those places. And I'm going to just do it very lightly so we don't interfere with the sound. So begin with meditating like a mountain. This is about settling in and settling down. You may sit in a chair, cushion on the floor, but just remember, you're comfortable and you're in a place where you can be. Let your eyes close softly if you wish, and begin to notice your posture. Your spine is like a tall stack of coins. Imagine that you are the mountain. Time for you is eternal. You take your seat. Your posture becomes imperial and commanding. Rest for this in a few moments. Settle in this for a few moments. Feel what it is like to have this seat, to have this posture. Ask yourself, What is it like to meditate like a mountain? Now let's orient toward beauty. In one tradition, we meditate like a poppy, a beautiful flower. Since you have a natural object on your altar, you may use it as a focus. Meditate like it. Sense it in as many ways as possible. Reach out to it physically and touch it. Ask yourself, what is it to meditate like this object from nature? Rest in this connection for a few moments. Can you notice where you're having thoughts about this object? Where is this action? See if you can move this action somewhere near your heart. Gently, gently. Now extend to your object from this place, sensing its beauty, sensing the light. Now ask yourself, what is it like to meditate like this beautiful gift from nature? We've established our seat. We have sensed beauty. Now let's meditate like the ocean. The ocean gives us a taste of our landscapes. It is a vast landscape. It's a place of great cycles and great tides. It's a source of the oxygen we breathe. As we meditate like the ocean, we notice our breath. We breathe deeply into our bellies and slowly exhale. We breathe in, we exhale. Slowly, rhythmically, like the waves of the ocean coming to shore and receding, in and out. Find your pace. Meditate like the ocean. Rest here for a few moments. Finally, we meditate like a bird. Birds and other animals often murmur, vocalize in contentment. Vocalization can be a prayer or an invocation of the Creator. For us, it can be the sound we make that connects us to Mother Earth. Her vibration is always with us. Tone softly on your exhale. Feel the vibration of your delicate humming move throughout your body. Extend your awareness out from your body to encompass your altar, the room you're in, the neighborhood, your city, the countryside, and as far as you can. Hum for a few moments. Hold a tone. When you've extended as far as you can, hold that sense of extension. As you've been toning, it may have gotten quieter and quieter, and it may be entirely internal now. Let's rest here for a few moments, and you can soften your toning to silence. Slowly, when you're ready, you may open your eyes, bring your awareness back to this program as we begin to consider the surface. I like this quote by Mircea Eliade. Settling into a territory is equivalent to founding a world. It was a wonderful one when I found it, and it always makes me think. Yes, we do create a world when we settle into a space. So today we're going to look a little bit at the surface. What about this space we settle into? What about this surface? And on your homework sheets, I was writing some ideas about surface. And we certainly can talk about the Earth's surface. We can talk about surface areas of solids. I like the idea of a diver coming to the surface. And when we talk about people, we often talk about, well, on the surface he was charming, or on the surface she seemed aloof. But there are other ways we can talk about surface. And I don't know if anybody has any other metaphors or thoughts about that, but if you wanted to type those in, that would be great as we just consider surface. The shift we're making here when we get to surface from bedrock is that in bedrock, a lot of the ideas we were exploring were about connecting and belonging. With surface, we move to this idea of interacting. And to interact with something, we have to be able to perceive it and respond to it. So landscapes, as we begin to explore them, often are based on our interaction with them. For example, we interact with a hill, and it's a huff and puff up and legs aching as we go down. We interact with a lake. If we're swimming across it, it may be, wow, a lot wider than I thought it was. So what are these ideas of surface, and what are the surfaces that are interacting when we approach landscapes, when we approach the earth, when we approach space and place? Some of the surfaces are actually those that belong to our physical body. And then we begin to think about, what is it about our body in space? What is it about our body? And have you ever thought about your body? What kind of surface is your body? There are a lot of programs that will talk about body types. For example, you can have a smooth body type, you have a rounded body type, a curvaceous body type, a very oblong body type, an angular body type. So when you think about your surfaces, what are your surfaces like? And that might be just shape. We have other thoughts about our surfaces. Is it a hard surface? Is it a resilient surface? Is it rough? Is it smooth? Do you receive? Is it receptive? Or is it something that repels? So there are a lot of ideas we can bring to the surface as we consider our own surfaces. And these are things that you might take to your journal for reflection, to begin to think about your surface as it interacts with the world. There are a lot of disciplines that look at surfaces, look at interaction, and look at perception. And there's a school called the Phenomenological School of Geography, big word for an academic discipline, that gives us some vocabulary and some different ways to explore this idea of surface. And let's find it. There we go. And so here we are. Here's a body. You're looking at this idea of space. Again, we're talking about the medium that holds all action. And we as the body have all of these streams of information flowing into us from all sorts of different levels. And by using language of this academic discipline, we can begin to sort out these streams of information that are flowing into us. And in sorting them out, we begin to understand how we are interacting with and how we are perceiving space. The first kind of space that we can perceive is somatic space. And this is how the upright human body experiences, senses, and moves through space. And Wendy and I were having an interesting discussion about, well, why is it an upright human body? And one of the ideas I had later thinking about that was that when we do meditation or when we try to orient ourselves, we typically are in an upright posture. Anybody who's ever meditated and tried to do it lying down, and if it's been a meditation that's been based on perhaps creating a solid around you, Merkaba meditation, anything like that, you will notice that trying to orient yourself to what is up and what is down, what is in front of me and what is behind me, becomes a little bit confusing when you're lying down, because our orientation seems to be feet on the ground, head to the sky, and that is one of the first ways we begin to perceive. So somatic space is about this way that we perceive. It's about anybody's body in space. I love the question. Does anybody have any things they want to type in about how does your posture affect your perception? Does anyone else feel that same confusion I do? For example, if you're lying down and trying to figure out what's up and what's down, what's forward and behind. Perhaps you don't. Maybe it's just me. Somatic space is something that comes from the Greek, soma. The Greek's word for body. It's anybody's body in space. And this is simply a binary kind of perception. You have things before you, you have things behind you. You have things to your right, things to your left, things are up, things are down. It's totally impersonal, totally binary. It's what can I hear? What can't I hear? What do I see? What can I not see? These are the ways you perceive somatic space. Space
Dana,
can
it's Wendy.
also be... Yes?
Oh, I'm sorry. I had a somatic space story I thought I would share if you're interested.
Oh, absolutely. Please share.
I was walking my dog yesterday with a friend and her dog, and I was looking down watching the sidewalk, and she was looking up and saw a beautiful rainbow. And so I was thinking about how I should have better posture and be looking up rather than always looking on the ground. And at that exact moment, she tripped because she was spending so much time looking up that she was forgetting to look down. So I thought of that as you were speaking about the somatic space.
And that's great. That's super. Thank you for that. And as you can see, looking down does get you looking at the ground where your feet need to be, whereas looking up, you see the rainbow. So it's just all about that up and down relationship, that very binary thing. And there are consequences for perceiving things in that binary kind of way, up or down. When we move to perceptual space, we begin to pull in this idea of emotional surfaces coming in contact with space. Our emotional surface, our intentions, our feelings and memories. And here is where it shifts from anybody's body to being your body. Perception means taking it in. It comes from the Latin and Middle English and Old French. And so it's not just a body, it's truly all about me when it comes to this. Another way we perceive space is existential space. This is the space we live in, space where individuals have concrete experiences. So here we have this chap. He's walking down this little alley in his neighborhood. He knows there's the supermarket. He knows around the corner is the coffee shop. He knows where his friends are. There's a sense of unity, a sense of group, a sense of territorial space that's devoted to particular activities, and these particular activities may be repeated over time. It's where people actually live and where they exist. Architectural space. Very deliberately created and bound space. Architecture, build, and craftsman. These are words that inform us about this. And as you can see, there is bound space. Even in the road that's going off to the distance, the boundary is the road. The road holds you to it to travel along that pathway. Just as the stairs up to the wall of what looks like a building and a curved wall, that keeps you to this particular space and it helps you navigate particular space. And then the two buildings confine you to a courtyard. Very well-defined space. And then the last way we have space presented to most of us is this cognitive space. It's the ground for reflection. It's our space for thinking and analyzing. And I actually think that cognitive space also includes different ways of knowing. And by that I mean, as we go into meditation, as we go into silence and stillness, we have that ability to know in a different way when we enter into this space. Well, this is a lot of theory, and I'd like for you to have a sense of experiencing this. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a little walk. And once again, I'd like you to just get very comfortable in your chair and lightly close your eyes and begin to take a few deep breaths, relaxing and knowing that we're going to take a little walk, but we're not going far. I'm going to invite you to take this walk through your neighborhood. Our starting place is going to be the door that leads to outside. So if you live in a building that has hallways and your door opens into a hallway, make sure you go to the door that actually takes you outside. A few deep breaths. You're standing outside of your door at this point, and I'm going to invite you to take some steps away from the building and begin to take a walk. Your favorite walk? However you feel comfortable, begin having a sense of movement, of walking in your neighborhood. As you begin to walk, I'd like you to notice your body. You are upright and moving your body in relationship to the space of your neighborhood. Consider this somatic space. It is about your body looking out at the world and all the input your body gathers. Things are before you, behind you, to your left, to your right, up and down. Take a moment to notice these things. What do you see directly in front of you? What is above you? What is to your left? What is to your right? Take a moment to look around. There are things that you can hear, things that you cannot hear. While you may know that there's a stream nearby, you may not be able to hear it. There are things that you can see and things that you cannot. While you know there may be a highway nearby, perhaps you cannot see it. There are things that you can smell and things that you cannot. What might those things be? There are things that you can taste and things that you cannot. There may be a feel and texture. This space is tied to the body. Continue to walk, taking steps, and now we'll allow for your body awareness to shift. And you are no longer a body, but you are an I or a me. The space becomes relational. It's all about you. You have feelings and thoughts about it. Something within this space is near or far based on you. Perhaps a memory is associated with something in the space. Something is felt within this space. What is close to you as you walk? What is distant? Is this space crowded? Do you feel relaxed or anxious? What is your memory of walking this way before? Tune into your feelings and memories. This is perceptual space and ties together your body's movement, the intentional choices you make about the space as you move through it, and the various perceptions, feelings, memories, and significance you assign to it. All based on you. Continue moving. The invitation was to walk through your neighborhood. This is space that is about a group living in a socialized way, many individuals living with each other. The group has some shared movements through space that recognize certain meanings that are experienced and repeated over time. Think about this as a repetitious use of space. Perhaps every weekday school is open. Every Sunday, people go to church. There are reference points within this space for attachment and involvement. There may be some natural boundaries. What do residents of this place do here? Is there something that forms a natural boundary like a stream, a coastline, a small line of hills? Is there a local church, a school, a graveyard? What about a shopping area? Do you have a sense that there are special areas where people do things in your neighborhood? Perhaps where the kids gather to skateboard. What kind of sense do you have about strangers in your area? How do you feel when you suddenly find out someone you know lives close to you? As you continue your walk, notice what organizes your walk. There are streets, buildings, perhaps even sidewalks. What do you see that was intentionally created? This is architecture space. This space is constructed and intentionally defines inside and outside, pathways for movement, areas of particular use. This is well-defined, tangible space that plays a role in existential space and structures perceptual space. Were some of your ideas about near and far based on buildings? Were some of your feelings based on events that may have occurred within or near a particular structure? Does a particular structure cause you to feel overwhelmed, depressed, elated, relaxed, nervous, happy, included, or excluded? Our walk is coming to an end. Turn around, make your way back home, and back to your space by your altar. Slowly bring yourself back to this place and this time, and recognize that you may be thinking about what you've just experienced, analyzing. This is a final aspect of space, cognitive space. And you may wish to open your eyes and take a moment, if you wish, to scribble a few notes about what you're thinking in this cognitive space. If you feel, you can always use your altar as a touchstone to reorient. Welcome back. Hope everybody's here and back and had some thoughts about this little exercise. It may be kind of challenging, but if we can, to put in a comment about something you may have discovered or something you hadn't thought about before. Love to hear if you got a comment from your experience.
Shane, I think even if people wanted to unmute their phones to say something, or their computers, that would be fine, and then they could mute it back, and we would probably
that'd be
able
great.
with feedback.
Terrific. Thank you, Wendy. It may take a while for you to have a sense of this, and so that's just fine as well. We're going to have another moment here to piece together some of this experience. And if something crops up as we go along, don't hesitate to kind of clear your throat, unmute your mic, and chime in, because I'd love to hear what you have to say about your experiences. Using these tools and understanding this different way of perceiving space as we have these streams flowing into it helps us understand the different ways we can receive communication. And Sand, I just noticed that you were feeling different vibrations as you went. If you care to elaborate, that would be super. That's okay too. Okay, just different vibrations, different sensing as we went along. Well, I'm going to ask now is that we consider positive and negative feelings of... Wendy,
no,
you may have to help
origins.
me with...
Yeah, it's of no obvious origin.
Great, great. Thank you. Thank you. Not all of these streams are pure. Anybody who drives a car knows that you have to have input from all of these streams all of the time. You're going to have the somatic stream informing you because you've got to know what's in front, behind, next to, up, down. You also have to know how close. It's all going to relate to you and to the car. And you're going to be taking the car in particular directions to do things. There are going to be reasons for the need in the car, a purpose, a space. And you're going to, which is an architectural space. And you're probably going to be analyzing and thinking about a lot of little things along the way. So there's nothing that we perceive purely in each of these streams. But when we take the time to slow down and experiencing them and focus on them separately, we understand how very different they all are and how they inform us in different ways. And I think that may just speak to some of what you were saying, Sand, about how each has a different vibrational or energetic quality, but they meld together to give us a bigger body of information. What we're going to do now is I'm going to ask you to recall the idea of sweet spot. And on your worksheet, page 3, it says pick a sweet spot. So if you can take a moment, consider what you would choose as a sweet spot. It may be someplace by the beach, it may be by the mountains, it may be a park, it may be just someplace, a coffee shop, any place where you feel a sense of harmony and that it's a specific place. And it can be a top of the mind thing. As I said earlier, you can have many sweet spots. This is just one that comes to mind right now. Now, below this place where you scribble in your sweet spot, there are a couple of boxes that you can tick off. And these boxes may be, I feel good there. The spot has easy access. You can check off what applies to you and your sweet spot as you've chosen it and how you experience it when you visit it. And it may be something totally not on my list. These were just ideas to get you thinking. And if anybody fills in other, feel free to type that in and maybe Wendy can translate for me. What other characteristics caused you to choose this spot as a sweet spot? I know when I think about certain sweet spots, for me, a lot of it has to do with the fact that I am distant from architectural space, or architectural space that binds me and directs me is very minimal. And right now I'm thinking about the great Highway 1 out there in California. There's a sense of boundlessness. And if anything binds the space, it's just the ocean on one side and the hills on the other. That's one of the things.
I don't know if you saw, Annie had a comment that it's peaceful.
Oh, peaceful. Absolutely. So as you look at these characteristics, lightful, what does peace speak to? Which stream of information is that? Beauty and invitation to come in further. Thank you, Sand. Yeah. Each of these comments speak to various streams of information, and picking this sweet spot is just a little exercise to get us to think about what kinds of streams inform us, and if there's a way we perhaps weight one over another. And that's kind of an interesting question as we continue to look at this idea of perception and dealing with surface. We're going to shift gears just a little bit, and some of these pieces of language that I've been using from this academic discipline come to us and have been ways that geologists, archaeologists, geographers begin to understand how they work together, these ideas, for the placement of cities, buildings, architecture, and people. We learn a lot about people and the way they think about place and space by the way they settle. There was a great book about Stonehenge and Woodhenge, and the idea that the placement there was so appropriate because of these various streams and the way they interacted with the people of the time to create this monument. We can sense that even as we come forward in time today. And just shift here to this idea of surface elements of space, or what's in your center. Oftentimes, we're attracted to what's on the upper level of surface when we talk about landscapes. I love Joseph Campbell's work, and Joseph Campbell often said that we can discover most what people value in a particular region, in a particular place, by what gets placed in the center of their cities or living space. In times gone by, what was in the center initially was the castle, the keep. And this was the idea that little power was very critical to the people who lived in this community. As time went on, there was a shift, and we began to see cathedrals put in the center of space. This was an emphasis and a move toward the clerical, the religious hierarchy, and the power they had over people in a space. And as we progress, we notice more and more in our cities that we can have a couple of different extremes. We can have huge corporate buildings, which tell us that finance and corporate activities are very important. Or we may find that our city centers are derelict, which means that we're not attending to our centers anymore. And all of this can inform us about this layer of the surface. So as we explore, these slides always intrigue me. I love St. Michael's Mount. That's the first one in the upper left. This is a cathedral on the top of this, and this was gray rock that's protruded up out of the area at that time before it was actually an island, which it is now. It was surrounded by a forest, and the Cornish name, this is in Cornwall, actually is gray rock in the wood. And it was an optimal place to build the center, to put something on there. So when we find some of these great monuments in many of these places, there are reasons, physical reasons, surface landscape, that inform us the importance of that being there. And you can tell this gray rock in the wood is a very prominent place. You got Notre Dame on the rivers, great traffic center. Chicago, beautiful flat lands. These towers can rise up. On Lake Michigan, great for trade. And then down in the right-hand corner, we've got Cincinnati and the great stadium on the river. These inform us in very subtle ways the importance of building, architecture, and what it says about the people in these places. So what's in your center? If you look at your town, what's in your center? I notice in Easton, by way of example, we have right now a lot of real estate offices. We're getting some nail salons. And I begin to wonder if the boutique aspect of Easton is kind of shifting and there's a change here. But Easton itself has a town center that is very colonial in appearance. It reminds me this was a great crossroads for a lot of colonial traffic. It was important. What's in your center? Why do you think Hillsborough is where it is? What was important about it? And San, you're in Eldersburg. What do you think was important about it? What's under the surface of all these buildings? What's in the center? What about you, Wendy? What about Chapel Hill?
You mean southern part of heaven?
It's
the
pardon?
university, I think. We call it the
It's
southern part of heaven.
Southern part of heaven. But what underlies the university? Why do you think they were drawn there? Was it the higher ground of the hill? Was it because there were rivers? What do you think may have been that space? Oh,
I
Annie's
have
got
always
historical
wondered that
buildings and a
question.
courthouse. Eldersburg is changing and becoming.
It's becoming a land of fast food and cheap stores. I am horrified, says Sand.
That's a beautiful segue into the next piece of this work, actually. But it sounds like with Chapel Hill having the university at the center, that your territory or your area actually values education, perhaps higher education, those kinds of things. Based on our friend Joseph Campbell. What did you say, Annie? I missed you. Hillsborough is?
Hillsborough has a lot of neat small shops, which is very true.
Okay. Okay, so perhaps it speaks more to artistic and smaller mom and pop kinds of things, kind of maybe an atavistic thing, kind of sliding back in time to where you have those. Moving on, we have this. I love this slide because one of my favorite movies is Playtime by Jacques Tati. What's emphasized in this slide, if you look at the woman, she is viewing 4 travel posters in a travel agency. The first one on the left shows a little boy, red, white, and blue, USA. The second one is Hawaii. You've got a woman lying on a lounge chair, sunning herself. The next one is Mexico, as we go across from left to right, and you have some kind of Aztec-y architecture in front of the foreground. And the far right is Stockholm. You've got a skier. What's happening in each of these pictures, though, is that you have the same exact building, as if each building, you could go anywhere, it's the same. The only thing that's different is the name. And the only thing that is apparent there are the subtle differences. We are plagued with that. Sand just brought this up. We are plagued with this urban sprawl, and I love thinking about it. Drive down any major strip mall area in any town, and what you see is the same line of ubiquitous corporate food serving up triple bypass specials in an endless array of homogeneous buildings. If you were dropped from outer space into Easton, Maryland's Walmart or Irwin, Tennessee's Walmart, you probably would not know where you were in the United States until to the majority of people, maybe by an accent, you wouldn't come to know that, oh, I must be in Tennessee, as opposed to I'm a waterman. You would get that. It's just a subtle shift in accent. We've become a homogeneous. This homogeneity really is a threat to us. When you have homogeneous space, I'll say it correctly, you have space where there are very few transition zones. There's very few thresholds where you experience the betwixt and between space. Betwixt and between space is the magical space that represents transition. Eliade has told us that it's really the loss of this transitional space that has caused a desacralization of the earth. That's a lot to take in, but we'll put it this way. Heterogeneous space is where you have many different buildings, you have many different things going on, and there's a threshold, there's a transition zone. When you walk from the school to the medical clinic, you know you've changed zones. When you walk from the clinic to a hospital, the zone has changed. From a house to a church, the zone has changed. There are transitional zones. Granted, we're looking at this at only one level. At the macro level, you can actually begin to observe this from community to community. Any small town, USA, it used to be you could probably go in and find the hardware store in the center of town and maybe something else. But the towns themselves as a whole very different personalities and look very different. In fact, George Maharis, who was one of the actors in Route 66, said that when they were on location, and their programs were all shot on location, they would go from town to town to town. They could be 10 miles down the road from one town to the next, and he said it was like going into a different world. As our country and our Western culture has gone in the direction that it has, you go 10 miles down the road now, you don't even know you've left one town for the next, but perhaps for a street sign that has told you now entering the community of. We've grown through sprawl to the point where we've lost our differences, lost personalities from place to place. And with that, there's been a desacralization of the earth. With that, too, it's been written about extensively that we've often lost our town centers, that we no longer have towns that have centers with distinct personalities, with distinct personalities that can inform us about what's there and the kinds of people and things we might find. And this is where we lose some of the sacred. And this is where we have to exercise, or we have the opportunity to exercise some of our spiritual muscle. Because to find the sacred, we may have to look very, very closely in a very tiny space to find the blade of grass that provides transition for a moment. We may have to find the crack in the sidewalk that trips us up, that brings us to a different sense. These are all things that and help us to find the sacred. So I've rattled on a bit, but I'm going to ask you where you found homogeneous space. And I'm going to give one example here, and it's Dana's example, actually. You go into any Cracker Barrel in the United States, and there's always a little old blue-haired lady behind the counter, and I think she's cloned. It's same like. Anybody else have something where there's idea of same like? Thank you. A townhouse community. Yeah, there's that sense of very regimented dwelling places. Absolutely. And for some people, that regimentation works. That's very helpful. And I think for all of us at certain times, we need that. Yes, and thank you, Walmart, Target, and others. Perfect. We like that high-in feeling of no surprises. We like to know what we know and be able to count on it. Yet, it's when we have those changes and those transitions that we can grow and we can find breaks. And I was really challenged on this when I was considering asking this question and putting this forth to you. Where do you find heterogeneous space? Florida is an example of the trans. Hi, Steve.
I can. Shane, it looks like Steve is saying that Florida is an example of the transition on a speeded up time scale.
Yeah, I think so. It's change on steroids. So where have we found heterogeneous space? My best example for an experience of that on a large scale has been when I go to a foreign city. The closest foreign city here to us, I think, is New Orleans. But I truly feel that there in that city prior to Katrina and a lot of the reconstruction, it was very heterogeneous. There were lots of different thresholds from neighborhood to neighborhood. London, great. Thank you. Foreign travel, I think, has been my biggest opportunity to find that heterogeneous space. Now, what's heterogeneous? It's new to us and is a break to the people who actually live there. To them, maybe coming here is a very different experience and provides them with a glimpse. What we learn, I think, is that changes provide growth. And as we begin to scratch the surface and look at the surface and what's beyond the surface, we're able to understand and help us really grow. So this brings us to this idea of thresholds. And I think what I'd like to do now is just one more quick exercise. Just close your eyes for a moment. And I want you to stand in the room of your house. It might be living room, you consider it the kitchen. Whatever the main room is in your house, have a sense of it. And then take a step to another room. You can open your eyes, and I'm hoping that you experienced a change in the sense of the room and the space. Something very subtle may have gone on. And this is part of your homework for next week as we begin to wrap up our session for this week, is to take some time and begin to notice how it feels to go from one place to another when you've crossed a boundary, when you've stepped over a threshold. And notice if there's a different sense of the space as you do so. And also for homework, what I'd like you to do, if you have an opportunity to do so, I think it might be of value, is you may take another walk. And this time, use your sweet spot. The one you made a note of on, I guess it was page 3 in your worksheet when we were working on that. When you take this walk, see if you can pull out from this walk a different sense of relationship as a body, a different relationship as pertains to feelings. If there's special places, group activity places, and what kind of dominant architecture might be there. And if any thought that is triggered by that particular spot. And as your final bit of homework, journeys, of course. Feel free to journey to your power animal or your teacher. And you can ask one of the two questions, or you may want to do both. How can I enhance my perception of space? And or, how can I recognize an opening to sacred space? And this may be something that will surprise you, and we'll just see what happens. So as we close today, let's take one more moment to touch our altar, touch into that space and that place. Take a deep breath and relax. And let's recognize that if we need a space to center and calm, we can always use our altar at any time. Our object of beauty ties us to Mother Earth, and we can light a candle to call in the gods and invoke sacred space. And we can always be reminded that we're part of a vast web of consciousness that extends in all directions and into all dimensions. Take a moment to breathe and connect to the ocean and recognize the ocean. This is another metaphor for our participation in a vast ground of being. Know that what is you is also a part of the ocean. And since everybody has this body and shares with the ocean, we're all connected. Our very cellular makeup connects us. Our breath connects us. And we are part of that pale blue portrait of our Earth Mother as she whirls through the cosmos, holding us as her children and sharing with us her awareness and nurturing. We can feel the power of the great systems of which we're a part, power that flows into us as energy and intelligence. It is up to us how we approach and use that power. It is up to each of us to make wise choices as we step out into the world and interact with all the great forces of nature and life. Working with the land and landscapes is an avenue to discover and understand our multidimensionality. It is a doorway to expanding and developing our consciousness. As we do this, we serve the world, our Mother Earth, and all our relations, the stones, the plants, the animals, each other, and our typically unseen cohabitants. Our hearts can grow, and we can find the passion and courage to stand in our authenticity and be. Thank you for being a part of this exploration with me. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, all of you, for being here. I honor all of you for your efforts on behalf of yourselves and Mother Earth. And until next time, touch the earth, light your inner fire, and shine.